Alright everyone, now it's time to talk about Donald Trump 2024. Link in the description. I'm not going to bother archiving it because it's RCP, so the numbers change as new polling comes in. You've got a new poll by Harris. Not Kamala Harris though. That one would be a little bit more skewed and wonky. Trump is still up 35 points in the Republican field as far as if he chooses to run, who the nominee will be. His aggregated score is over 52%, which means he gets more votes than everyone else combined. And I've said for months now, if Donald Trump runs, because of two factors, a lot of people will sit it out number one, and a lot of states won't even have primaries number two. Number one, local and state level functions are being subsumed by the MAGA crowd. Bannon has been doing this for several years. It's been highly successful. It's really the groundwork run up to what I conceive of as a 24 run. If you therefore have considerable influence in the state, you can prevent a primary from even happening. And that's because of point number two, which is that Donald Trump has the technical incumbency. He's eligible to run, but he has been president of the United States. In such a situation, it would be insane for the Republican Party, and some of them, the never-Trumpers at the top will push this. The Liz Cheneys, the Mitt Romneys, the Mitch McConnells. Mitch McConnell, by the way, will throw Trump under the bus. That's a prediction. Even though he's a coward on his way out, he's pushing 80 years old. What'll happen is that a lot of states will suspend the primary process. They will say, look, this person is out ahead 35 points. They're the incumbent. They were the last Republican president. They have sky-high in-party approval. They do well in matchups against Biden, certainly against Harris, etc. We're suicidal if we have a lengthy primary process requiring that we take candidates off the campaign trail when we could simply nominate Trump and let him and his proxies and endorsers go out and campaign. Otherwise, we're fighting possibly, if Biden runs again, against a campaign that doesn't have that issue. There would be no primary process. I suspect that the Democrats will not want Biden to run again, or Kamala, certainly. That would be disastrous. Kamala might lose in a 50-state sweep, to tell the truth. They might try to dark horse it with Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg out of nowhere. I'm not really seeing any Democratic candidate that I can consider to be a good matchup against Donald Trump. There were rumblings the other day that Donald Trump might announce as early as next week. And it's very, very interesting to see the news coverage of this. It depends on where you go. If you go to a reasonable analyst, someone who understands Trump politics, so not the legacy media, by and large, including Fox, you'll see Trump is chomping at the bit to run. He wants to get out ahead, make it a quick and easy process. He's feeling pretty good about it because he's not even willing to necessarily wait for midterms. If you go to CNN or MSNBC right now, what do you see? Well, Donald Trump is trying to get out ahead of inevitable charges from the January 6th insurrection that he himself personally led. He was holding a banner and entered the Capitol and told people to go kill the pigs and stuff. And clearly, he's worried about being charged. And so he wants to throw his hat in the ring and get in there really quickly to try to silence the brave side of the Republican Party that stands against him and his evil authoritarianism. It's a tale of two realities. Now, the real truth is that Trump has been planning to run again from day one, from the second the asterisk administration began, and Bannon and other people at the lower level have been making that possible by doing what I suggested years ago people in the GOP and the Democratic Party, by the way, should do, which is you conceive of it as a top-down system. And a lot of Trump voters were guilty of this. They saw him as God Emperor, and so they figured that if they just elected Trump, everything would magically be rainbows. And even though that wasn't the case, of course, there were remnant neocons in the GOP in the House that stymied him for 2 years, certainly in the Senate, Romney, etc., et al., and court decisions, activistic courts that stood in the way of things that were self-evidently legal, like allocating Pentagon funding for defense to the wall. I would think that your border is part of national defense. Lower court disagreed with this for a while. It took a couple of years to ram it through. A lot of people figured that Trump would just magically wave a magic wand, everything would get better. For the economy, by and large, that was true. For diplomacy, by and large, that was true. For broader moral and social issues, he was defanged effectively for several years by his own Republican legislature. And that became a problem because people's expectations and the reality that I posited back when Trump first announced and said he'd be a mild reformer, you can expect him to accomplish many things, but you can't expect the moon on a stick, that was the truth. The perception was different from that. What you've got right now, though, is a situation where a resurgent Trump in 24 would have a huge amount of impact within especially the U.S. House. You're talking about, if I remember correctly, 86 different Republicans that he's endorsed or have officially been like MAGA Republicans standing in the House that are either up for election as incumbents or they're incoming. Many of them have knocked off neoconservatives. They've done on steroids what the Justice Dems did in the legislature on the Dem side. So they got a bunch of progressives, socialists really, into the U.S. House. They did this by targeting vulnerable neoliberals in districts that had moved to the left. It's very successful. In only a couple of years, Bannon and his people have done 10 times that. It is clear that we want Trump. That is the name of the game. DeSantis is an afterthought. I think DeSantis would be fine in the future, although I do have several misgivings about him. And I can see the astroturfing of Ron DeSantis by the legacy media, and including by some Democrats. And by the way, if there is a primary process, DeSantis will be buoyed up by liberals that think that he's easier to beat than Donald Trump. They will back him. They will do the opposite of what they did in 2016, where some of them crossed lines to vote in open primaries for Trump because they laughably thought that he'd be easy to beat. Well, he doesn't have political experience. He's saying off-the-wall shit. Hillary Clinton will mop the floor with him. Clearly, their strategy didn't work so well. I don't think it would work so well with DeSantis either, honestly, at this point, with the polling and the economy the way they are, and likely remaining for some time to come. I think that any reasonably good Republican will win the presidency. But Trump is the most qualified. Again, think of the in-party support. Think of the fact that a significant proportion of the MAGA voting base wants revenge on the system. They're going to come out with turnout like you've never seen before. A lot of those people are disaffected Democrats, especially in Rust Belt states, that voted for Trump in 2016 due to economic issues. Well, what the hell has been thrown back on the table over the last year and a half? And then amplified 10 times over. They're going to vote for Trump. Yeah, Trump would probably win Michigan. Trump would probably win Wisconsin. Trump, I don't think, would have a problem in a place like Ohio, Iowa, or Pennsylvania, Indiana, some of these states that have been variously in play for some years prior. I think that Donald Trump is the man of the hour. Keeping in mind, there are a couple of factors at play that could keep him out. Number one, he has a health problem. He is in his 70s now. Number two, Biden has a health problem. Or number three, Joe Biden decides not to run and says that health problems are the reason he's not running. In the latter cases, age becomes an issue in the campaign. That would probably force a primary within the GOP. It would be astroturfed as a major issue, even though the average voter wouldn't, I think, care about it. I think it'd be less than half of the GOP voting base that would give a damn. When you look at the rest of the candidates being floated, some of them are quite old too. DeSantis is only in his 40s. That's a better argument for him waiting another turn. If you're 55, you're young by presidential standards. He can take several more terms as governor, a very popular governor, locking down that state and making sure the Democrats cannot make inroads there and be effectively a kingmaker. DeSantis would actually, by the way, benefit more from endorsing Trump standing down and making sure that Florida goes red, because then he'd be owed more favors. He can say, well, Florida's been a swing state for a while. Yeah, it's been moving more red, but don't talk about that part. Don't say that part out loud. I delivered Florida for Trump. And Trump will shake his hand and stuff. They'll do photos together. There were also claims the other day by some people, not necessarily the most reliable sources, that Trump had not ruled out DeSantis as a possible partner for a 24 run. There are several problems. Trump would have to relocate states because I do not believe that the president and their VP can be from the same state. I believe there's a rule against that, and they're both in Florida. Number two, just because a person does not rule something out does not mean that they are promoting it actively. I don't think DeSantis would be the best choice as a Trump running mate. I think the problem is that you would have two people who would be vying for the limelight. And Trump, I don't think, would be willing to tolerate that. I would think Rand Paul would be a much better choice. That would be my top choice for running mate. There are others, although most of them are not necessarily on that same tier. DeSantis would be acceptable. I just don't know that Trump's personality would work well with that, especially when, even though they haven't actually sparred and the Trump-DeSantis feud thing is largely mythological, again, if you have a sparring of personalities, there could be a problem. Trump would be extra sensitive about who he chooses as running mate if he chooses to run again anyway, because of Mike Pence, who clearly would not be running mate. And Mike Pence, by the way, is in some of these polls, and he's in the mid-single digits. He's clearly not going to be the nominee, nor should he be. Pence would be one of the few people who might be able to lose, which would be very, very funny indeed. That's about all. Peace out.